الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Alhamdulillah, verily all praise is due to Allah. Nahmaduhu, so we praise Him. Wa nasta'inuhu, so we seek help from Him. Wa nastaghfir, so we seek forgiveness from Him. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شُرُورِ أَنفُسِنَا, and we take refuge in Allah from evil within our own souls, وَمِنْ سَيِّئَاتِ أَعْمَالِنَا, and from our own wicked deeds. مَنْ يَهْدِي اللَّهُ فَلَا مُضِلَّ لَهُ, whomsoever Allah guides, none can misguide. وَمَنْ يُضْلِلْ فَلَا هَادِيَ لَهُ, whomsoever Allah allows to lead astray, none can guide. وَأَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. And I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except for Allah. He is alone with no partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his slave and his messenger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran, we begin in his name after we seek refuge from shaitan. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O you who believe, have taqwa, have God consciousness, fear Allah as you should be feared, and do not die except that you die as Muslim in the state of Islam. Inshallah, today what I want to talk about is I want to answer a question about Islam that I have always had. Something that I wondered about growing up, something that I didn't know if there even was a clear answer for until I took a course a few months ago in which the Shaykh sort of brought it up. And the question that I want to sort of answer today is something that I think we can apply, we can talk about this sort of line of thinking in many other aspects of our day-to-day, many other aspects of not just Islamic things, but in anything in life. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do something? Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want this or that? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose this or choose that? And the answer to this question, I think, if we phrase it the right way, is very beautiful. So I'll begin it by leading us on this way. So there's certain virtues in Islam. For example, patience, or respecting your parents, or controlling your anger. There's certain characteristics or certain attributes of character and manners that are very virtuous in Islam. They're these attributes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us are ways that we can very easily earn the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By, for example, being dutiful to your parents. We know that it's one of the most recommended acts in Islam. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us in the Quran to do so. And even not doing it is something that we would be sinful for. Yet, we find that in our day-to-day lives, we find that, when we observe ourselves and when we observe other people, sometimes these characteristics come easier to some people than they do to others. So, you might find someone who it's very easy for them to be patient. You might find someone who's very easy for them to smile at other people. Or it's very easy for them to get along with people or not hold grudges or so on and so forth. We might find that we are one of those people that it's easy for us to do something, but it's very difficult for us to do something else. And that was the question I had. If these all attributes are ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grow to love somebody, that they show this attribute, right? How is it then that Allah will give that attribute to somebody, something that Allah will love from that person, and then He wouldn't give it to somebody else, or make somebody else work harder to get it? And it's a question that I sort of always wondered. It's a question that I didn't even know there was an answer for until I took this class. So my mother Institute came and taught a class on manners and character. And I wanted to lead us through that example that Shaykh gave in this class, because I think we've all heard the generic khutbah on character and manners. I think I've given that khutbah here. Right? Just talk about the virtues of having character and manners, but I don't think we've really seen it from this point of view. That when we put it in the context of why do some people have a characteristic that others might not, where am I at a disadvantage when it comes to certain things? Am I at a disadvantage at all? And this question or this line of thinking, like I said, is something that you might want to apply to other parts of Islam, or might want to apply to other things in your life. Why can't I take that saying, why did Allah do that to somebody or that to somebody? These are things that we might think in other areas of our lives as well. And I think the answer will be basically the same. And it comes down to, we can parallel it with one argument in biology or psychology. It's the nature versus nurture debate. Anyone's heard of that before? So basically, if someone in biology, some animal or some person in psychology or sociology, if someone has some attribute or some characteristic or some trait, was that trait given to them, or was that trait built into their nature, or did they nurture it? In other words, was that something that they would have always had? Was that something that was built into their very core? Or was it something that through their experiences they developed? So we'll take an example of, for example, identical twins. But we split them up at birth. And we took them and we made them live in very different places. They didn't even know they had a twin, right? After 18 years when they're adults, what of those two twins are exactly the same? Are they the same height? Do they have the same hair color? Those things we might say are part of their nature. But what are those things that are nurtured? Like let's say if one of the twins had an accent, because for example, they lived in the UK or something. Or if one of those twins, their parents put them in wrestling or football in high school, and so one of those twins is very athletic and the other one isn't. Those are things that are nurtured, right? So what I want to answer today is when it comes to our mannerisms or our characters or those traits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says are traits that are beloved in human beings. When it comes to those traits, how much of them are based in our nature? How much of them did Allah decide you are going to be a patient person? And how much of it was it something that we nurtured or we developed on our own? And I think the clearest way, or there's one very clear narration which the Prophet gives us in the hadith that answers this. It's a hadith in Abu Dawud. There was basically a congregation of people that came to meet Prophet. And the majority of them, as soon as they arrived, they dismounted, and they ran to the Prophet. The narration says that they went to kiss the hands and feet of the Messenger of Allah. That's how much love they had for Prophet. Prophet, they dropped everything and just like ran to him. You can imagine. Except for one person. And it doesn't say whether he was the leader of the group or not, but one person in particular, he decided to take his time. So he didn't rush with them. Imagine they were traveling, they came to visit, so maybe he was dirty, maybe his hair was messy, maybe he had sand in his clothes. So the narration says that he changed, or basically he put on his two garments. So he made himself look presentable. Then he went to the Prophet to meet. And the Prophet told this person, he says, you have two characteristics which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes. And he went on to say that you have gentleness and deliberation. And I think like gentleness, deliberation, what are they? So gentleness, being calm, being humble. When you act in a certain way, you act very gently. You take your time with things, right? But what's deliberation? Before I say something, before I act upon something, I stop. I take the time to think about that action. Is that really something I want to do? I put thought into things before I do them, so I don't do things recklessly. So gentleness and deliberation. Two characteristics that the Prophet said Allah likes. And this genius Sahaba, right? Imagine you were him, and you were just told by the Prophet, Allah likes that you have these two things. What would your response be? I think you imagine being praised by the Prophet to your face. What would you do? Like me, I would probably be speechless. I wouldn't know what to say. The Prophet just complimented me, right? What does this genius Sahaba do? He not only like responds to Prophet, but in fact he asks a follow-up question. He says, these two characteristics, have I acquired them, or has Allah created them in my nature? And I think this is a question we want to answer, right? Did I acquire those attributes on my own, or did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala place them in my nature? And the Prophet said, no, Allah has created them in your nature. And then he said, praise be to Allah, the man replied, praise be to Allah who created in my nature two characteristics which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his apostle like. Next semester it's Allah. And I don't know about you guys, but was that the answer you expected? Prophet basically said, no, those two characteristics Allah gives. But what does that mean? Does that mean that Allah gave them to some people and didn't give them to other people? Does that mean that He is at an advantage when it comes to those traits that Allah likes, and other people, myself, maybe we might be at a disadvantage? Is that the answer we were looking for? Well, in another hadith given by Imam al-Bukhari in his compilation of manners, Adab al-Mufrad, he says that Prophet said, Allah Almighty has shared out, He has divided out your character between you as He has divided out your provisions between you. So what do we mean by that? When it comes to provisions, when it comes to wealth, for example, I think we all sort of understand that some people were given more wealth than other people. Some people were given hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some people were given a more humble life. And I think that's something that we sort of understand. Why? Because we know that the person that's given all of that tons of money, that could very easily be something that earns them the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if they use it in the wrong way, or if they've earned it in the wrong way. Or when they're called to put their right upon that money of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pay sadaqah or zakat on their money, they might not. And then that could very easily be something that's used against them on the day of judgment. We know that the people who are not given much, if they are patient, that's something that they can very easily gain pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through by being patient. So when it comes to provisions, I think we understand, right? That if somebody is given more than me, it doesn't mean Allah loves them more than me. But when it comes to these characteristics, character, when it comes to your manner, if somebody is given, for example, the characteristic of patience, does that mean that Allah loves those that are patient? Does that mean that Allah loves that person more than me and chose to give that person patience and not to me? Is that the answer we're looking for? Well, if we go back to the hadith, one of the points I want us to take away is that when the Prophet says something, when the scholars look at what the Prophet said, they not only look at, did he answer that question completely? They also say, did he, with his answer, negate something else? Or did he, with his answer, nullify something else? So when the Prophet answered, he didn't say, no, all of your characteristics are given to you by Allah. He didn't say, no, those aren't things that you can attain on your own. Only Allah can give them to you. What did he say? He said, no, these two Allah gave to you. Which means what? That gentleness, deliberation, those two characteristics are something that we can all have if we all work for them. But still, does that answer make us happy? Well, if somebody was given gentleness and deliberation from the beginning, they're going to be earning Allah's pleasure by those attributes earlier than me. I have to work harder for them, right? How is that fair? And if we look at the answer to this question, this is what I want us to take away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't like your boss. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't judge you based on results. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judges you based on your actions and your intentions. And really, when it comes to matters in this life, there is never going to be justice in this world. Allah is the most just, and His justice is saved for the day of judgment. Everything will be given its due justice on the day of judgment, and that's the point of the day of judgment, right? If somebody, for example, takes the life of 100 people, the most you can do if you wanted to punish him would what? Take his life once. How do you get the justice back for those other 99 people? That's where the day of judgment comes, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will extract that back on the day of judgment. Everyone will pay for exactly what they've done in this life, and they'll know it down to the average when they get further back. So when it comes to our attributes, this is what I want us to recognize. There's a very famous narration, one that we often hear right before Ramadan, so this is a great reminder, that Aisha radiallahu anha narrates in Bukhari Muslim, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the one who is proficient in the recitation of the Quran, so the one who is very good, they're an excellent qari, right? They will be given the reward. They will be given, basically, the Messenger of Allah says, they will be with the honorable and obedient scribe. In other words, they'll be with the angel. But the person that recites the Quran and finds it difficult to recite. So the person that recites it, but it's difficult for them. But they try their very best. So they try their hardest to recite it in its best possible way. They are given double the reward. So the person that finds it easy to recite the Quran, they have the reward anyway. But the person that finds it difficult, but they put in the effort to recite it anyway, they're given double the reward. Why? Because Allah is judging you based on your effort. And in another narration, the Prophet, he was sick. And some of the Sahaba, there's one Sahaba in particular, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He visited the Prophet, and he said, basically, he noticed the Prophet was sick. He said he had a very high fever, and it was sort of abnormally high, you can imagine. And the Prophet said, yes, I have the fever. He basically said, the fever of mine is like the fever of two men. And so Abdullah ibn Mas'ud asked him, does that mean that you will get double the reward? And he imagines the Prophet of Allah, right? Does that mean because you're suffering twice as much as us, even though you're a prophet, does that mean you get double the reward? Prophet said yes. He said that there is not, he went on to say, there is not another Muslim, there's no Muslim that is afflicted with some harm, some sickness, even some inconvenience, but that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes some sins from him. just as a tree sheds its leaves. That doesn't matter what sort of illness, ailment, it doesn't matter how long it's going on. So long as that thing is, so long as the duration of that illness, that person is shedding their skin. You might want to imagine being in that illness longer and longer and longer, and all of your sins are going away, right? But what's the point we take out of it? That even the Prophet ﷺ was teaching us very clearly that if a person is struggling more, if a person is suffering more through something, it is more rewarding for them. So then, when it comes to the attributes that I was talking about at the beginning, that person that was blessed with patience and that I don't have, for example, does that mean that they are being rewarded more for being patient than I am? Well, if I have to struggle more for it, if I have to put in more effort for it, then Allah will judge me based on my effort. So then that person that hit the genetic lottery and got all the great manners and character in this life, maybe I will be more rewarded than them if I struggled more hard to exhibit those attributes. Does that make sense to everyone? Because I'm working harder at something, it's more rewarding for me. It wasn't that that person was blessed with something that I wasn't. I was given an opportunity that they weren't given to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I can develop those same things. I can grow to love you through putting in effort. So what I want us to take away from this khutbah is we can all look at our own selves, our own soul. We can all look at our own manners and character. We can identify within ourselves. What is it that I need to work on? What is it? What is the weakest part of my character? What is the weakest part of my manners? And that attribute or that weakest part is the thing that will be the most rewarding for you to fix. And that will be, where you get the most reward for struggling against. So, for example, if we go back to our school days, if there's an exam being given, and the teacher's going to test you on chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3. Let's say chapter 1 is worth 10% of your grade. Chapter 2 is worth 10% of your grade. But chapter 3 is worth 80% of your grade. What are you going to study more for? You're not going to split your time 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Well, most smart students will spend all of their time studying chapter 3. Why? Because that's what's worth the most. So if we look at our own character and manners, what's the part of ourselves that needs the most work? That's the part that we should focus on. If I have a hard time controlling my anger, I should put some time and effort into controlling my anger. That's more worth it for me. If I'm a person that, I find it hard to get along with other people, or my neighbors, or my coworkers, or my siblings, etc., etc. If I can identify within my own character those parts that are more difficult for me to earn Allah's pleasure, those are the parts that I should work on. Because those are the parts that will earn me more. And as Ramadan comes in, what sometimes people do is they make lists about what are the things I want to do in Ramadan. Like what are the attributes or what are the goals that I want to hit. And it's a very good suggestion. I don't know if the other Khatibs up here have been giving that, but to make a list of something. You have a whiteboard in your room, or even a sheet of paper. Write some goals down, put a piece of tape, and put it on your wall, right? I want to do this much Quran every day. I want to pray this many rakats at least every night. I want to do this, 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 this. And sometimes people do that, but the only thing they focus on are these very standard forms of ibadah. Prayer, sadaqah, right? Someone like reading X amount of ayahs per day or pages of the Quran per day. Why don't we focus on our character? Why don't we spend some time to increase in that attribute of ours that is with us 24/7, right? When you pray for a few minutes, a few times a day. When you give zakat, you typically do that once a year, right? When you're fasting, you're only fasting during the day, and then you're not at night. And even then, pretty much we're only fasting during Ramadan, right? But when it comes to your character and manners, you are literally doing that every minute. Every minute of your life, you're having manners and character with how you deal with people. Why isn't that something we focus on? The Prophet ﷺ said about character and manners that he said the most beloved of people and the nearest to sit with me on the day of judgment, the Prophet ﷺ said, are those with good character. And he said that the most disliked amongst you to me and the farthest to sit away from me on the day of judgment, the Prophet said 3 categories. The first is those that are very talkative. Basically, he mentioned attributes of bad character. He said those that are very talkative. And they talk about useless things and nothing productive. Called them farfarun. And the second category, the mutashaddiqun, those that are very pretentious in their speech. That when they talk to other people, they try to make themselves sound much smarter than they actually are. They try to put you down with their words. You can think of pretentious in speech. I think it's a good way to think. And then the last category are those that are arrogant. Or some scholars say in particular towards speech. Those are arrogant in their speech. That will sit farthest away from him on the day. But basically what we learn from the hadith is the more you work on your character, the more better akhlaq that you show, that you put effort towards having, the closer you will be to the Prophet someone here. And who better is there to be than with the Prophet on the day? So in the second khutbah, we'll tie this in. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us between the two khutbahs, and then dua for your forgiveness. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم واستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So to kind of tie things together, what did we talk about today? We basically we went over this question that if somebody was blessed with an attribute, say for example patience, something that will very easily earn them the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being patient through tough times. That some people find patience very easy, some people find it very difficult. And this can be the same for any of the other attributes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says are virtues. And the people that find it easy, we should never think of them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preferred them over us. Why? Because that attribute is easy for them, yes, they are earning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love. And that's not something we should be jealous of. But if I have to work harder to be patient, that is another avenue I have to earn anything more of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. Because that is something that I can work towards that will earn me more reward than someone who's got it easy. So when it comes to the attributes of our character that we find the lowest, those are the attributes of character that we should work on the most. And the Prophet said in the hadith said, nothing is placed on the scale that is heavier than good character. Indeed, the person with good character will have attained the rank of the person who is fasting or praying. And especially when Ramadan's coming up, right? We know that our deeds are multiplied in Ramadan. And when it comes to Ramadan, that's when we increase in our, obviously, fasting, but our prayers and our reading of the Quran and so on. And what is Prophet saying in this hadith? That the person who has good character is the person that attains the same rank as the one who, the person with fasting and prayer. So what's better than fasting and praying and having good manners? It's fasting and praying and having good manners all at the same time. So why isn't that something that we should be working on? Our character and our manners is something that we should make physical goals of on our Ramadan list and put them there. That I'm going to work on this particular aspect. I'm going to work on controlling my anger. I'm going to work on being nicer to my neighbors. I'm going to work on connecting relationships with my distant family. Why aren't those things that we look towards in our Ramadan and something that needs to be fixed about ourselves? Because what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us is the purpose of fasting? In the Quran, so Dr. He says that He prescribed fasting for you as He prescribed to go before you so that you may earn what? Taqwa. And what is taqwa? God consciousness. What we began the khutbah with, right? That fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that fear that makes you guard yourself from displeasing. And that attribute of taqwa, we can very easily see how fasting does that. Because every time I want to eat something, I have to remember, no, I'm fasting. Every time I want to drink something, no, I'm fasting. Every time I want to curse out this person or say something mean or talk behind this person's back, I have to remember, no, I'm fasting. And what has to happen, what developing taqwa is instead of saying, no, I'm fasting, you have to say, no, I'm fasting for the sake of Allah. And then outside of Ramadan, when you're not fasting, you will remember those same things. Every time you think about eating, Bismillah, because I was conditioned from fasting to remember Allah when I eat. Every time I drink something, Bismillah, because I was conditioned to remembering Allah every time I drink something. And now you are conditioned to remembering Allah with every action in your life. All of the simple little things. That's what taqwa is, right? And now when it comes to your character and manners, if that's a goal of yours in Ramadan, then every time you exhibit something of your character and manners, which we remember we said was like every minute of your life, it can be something that you remember Allah with. It can be something that you earn His pleasure with. It can be something that you earn taqwa through. And that's how we can grow closer to Allah. And it's specifically we look for those parts of our character that are the weakest. Those are the parts of our character that will earn us the most reward. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people that can learn about the ways to please you, Ya Allah, and to exhibit those attributes. We ask you, Ya Allah, to make us people that are critical of ourselves in a positive way. We ask you, Ya Allah, to make us people that can look into our own character and see what is wrong and correct it for your sake. We ask you, Ya Allah, to make us people that are reunited with our loved ones in paradise. We ask you, Allah, to make us people of our family who are sick, to grant them shifa and to grant them recovery from their illnesses. We ask you, Allah, to make the people from our families and from our communities that have passed away, to forgive them of their sins and to reunite them with their friends and their families in Jannah. We ask you, Allah, to make us people of character and manners and to make those sins easy for us. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين وآخر الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. ربنا إنك من تدخل النار فقد أخزيته وما للظالمين من أنصار. ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. الله. يا الله لمن حمده. الله 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 الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم. الله. يا الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Jazakallah khairan to today's Khatib, Brother Rehan Shaikh. Inshallah, he's going to be joining us for family night tonight. We have the Ramadan Hifz program Just like Brother Rehan said, those who struggle with learning the Quran have a higher reward. So take this opportunity during Ramadan and learn one of the following surahs: Surah Al-Kahf, Surah Yasin, Surah Al-Rahman, or Surah Al-Mulk, with Sheikh Khalid or Sheikh Anas, inshallah. And then don't forget the parking lot project that we have. Alhamdulillah, we raised 105K. We still need $95,000 left in order to be able to demolish this building and build a parking lot and the pipes under. The Ramadan calendar is on the wall. If you would like to donate a Ramadan iftar and feed the community, please talk to me or Brother Anwar. Inshallah, we can help with that. If you have any questions about Ramadan, you can ask me, Brother Mirza, Brother Anwar, about that too. We have Journey Through the Quran for the women's classes, tafsir classes, with Dr. Fatima Arafat Monday through Thursday. Please sign up for that with her or Sister Jabeen, inshallah. Homework Club, we have that as well every single day, Monday through Thursday, for the ages of 6 and up. If you'd like to register, please let me know, inshallah, we can help with their tutoring. We have the Green Hills Mortuary outside. If you're interested in buying a grave in advance, please talk to them. Inshallah. Every Friday we have women's group from 11:30 to 1. Also with Dr. Fatima Arafat. For the women, if you're interested, if you have any questions, there's a welcome booth outside. You can ask the questions there. Please make dua for those who are sick. Brother Dr. Khan is sick, and please make dua for those who are sick. Yes, first Tarawih, inshallah, will be Tuesday night, May 15th. First Tarawih will be Tuesday night, May 15th. Inshallah.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى وفي كل حين يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد رحمة ترحم بها أمواتنا يا رب، وتعافيهم وتعفو عنهم وتوسع مدخلهم يا رب العالمين، وتنور عليهم قبورهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد صلاة ترحمنا بها رحمة تغنينا بها عن رحمة من سواك يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد رحمة تظلنا بها تحت ظل عرشك يوم لا ظل الا ظلك يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد تهدي بها اولادنا وبناتنا وزوجاتنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم نور علينا في حياتنا بالقران الكريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل القران الكريم ربيع قلوبنا وجلاء همومنا وذهاب احزاننا وهمومنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يقراه فيرقى ولا تجعلنا ممن يقرأه فيشقى يا رب العالمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار يا رب العالمين. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. الحمد لله